Okay, how have the crashes you've had affected your riding?
Well, I wear pads now.
Crashing and injuries are a serious bummer, but if you're a rider who enjoys challenging trails, jump lines, and features, you assume a level of risk every time you ride, especially if you're pushing your limits. And even when we're careful, crashes can and do happen. So what are you doing to minimize crashing and injuries while you're pushing your limits? I'm Jason Van Horn from Bermstyle, coming to you from the Tiny Garage Bike Shop. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in. And I'd like to welcome my brother Isaac to the channel. He happens to be currently in recovery from surgery following a bad crash himself, so he's had a lot of time to ponder this subject. This episode starts with a discussion of some recent injuries, which then transition into a conversation about risk awareness, and risk management. And obviously, the consequences only get higher as we age as mountain bikers. Before moving on, disclaimer, the following will include some of that crash footage, and that could be triggering to some viewers. Let's get into it. How do you minimize risk while you're riding bikes, and do you even think about that? I think that sometimes we forget that mountain biking is filled with inherent risk. As experienced mountain bikers, we enjoy riding challenging trails and features, and we work regularly riding jumps, drops, steep technical lines. And I know you and I both have decades of mountain biking experience, so we're both comfortable riding black diamond, double black diamond trails. Like, we like challenge, and we get really comfortable riding this stuff. And I think sometimes we forget that there's a high consequence for rider error at times, and these consequences have the potential of resulting in major injuries. So, as mountain bikers, we're both kind of what you call middle age at this point, right? I still think of myself as 35, but that's probably a little...
Yeah, one day you're not.
Yeah, right. So I personally have a basic rule when it comes to sending it, and it's like, when it comes to big stuff, big jumps, drops, other sorts of features, I like big, easy things because I feel like there's a lower consequence. And we've both gotten hit the ground hard a number of times, and we've both had our injuries. And in the event of a crash, I don't want to be cartwheeling into an immovable object or flying off of a cliff and landing on trees or rocks. So, yeah, it's hard to. Sometimes it's hard when you're in the zone. It's hard to remember that mistakes can have high consequences, and risk management isn't on the forefront of my thoughts. And, right now, let's show us your brace. So one of the reasons this topic came up is you had a recent crash, and it was a big one.
Oh, yeah. Insert photo here.
Yeah. Well, the day started off really good, right? It was day 2 of riding. Came down. We rode in the Southern Oregon area, and we're having a good time on the e-bikes. We had a full crew.
Yeah, good crew. Birthday ride. Good times.
The vibe was good. Everybody's riding well.
Yeah.
I had a recent crash, and I've been dealing with a lot of shoulder instability. Basically, my shoulder's been coming out of its socket a lot, and I'm on the docket to get some shoulder surgery. And I'm a novice to that, but you've had both your shoulders operated on, so you're familiar with shoulder dislocations.
Yeah, I have both of them fixed, and then another shoulder surgery just 2 years ago for tendon repair.
Yeah. So, you were there. Here, let's talk about mine first, and we'll go on to yours. So, let's see. It was right before my birthday. You and the kids came up, and we were riding the Fear and Loaming Trail. And that was a pretty sweet day up until, so we came up on the nice step-down jump. We kind of checked it out. It's, 10, 12 feet high, you think?
Maybe. At max.
Yeah, it was a good distance. It was more about the distance and the step.
I consider that like a medium-sized hit.
Yeah, it wasn't
in my world.
It was advanced, but it wasn't super gnarly.
Yeah,
there's lots of crash zones, so we hit it. We shot some video and some photos, and then
I was actually very, very pleased that you were gung ho to be the first guy to be like, yeah, I do this. I'm gonna hit this. I'm like, yeah, bro's riding today.
Yeah. I feel like with my shoulder dislocation, I first dislocated it almost 20 years ago when I was downhill racing. And for the most part, after that, I've been able to rehab it and get it back. But in this case, I had dislocated it in April, and it was hard. It was like had to work it back in, but it hadn't been fully rehabbed. It wasn't as strong as it needed to be. And on that impact, the second time, I really need to throw in one more pedal. And to squeeze my bike over the landing, I kind of did this, push the bike out like that. And that impact just completely blew out its socket. I couldn't even hold on to the handlebars. Ended up veering off into the bushes and cartwheeling. And then we had to put it back in its socket while on the trail.
That one took longer. That's probably the longest it's taken me to be with someone to reduce a dislocated shoulder. Personally speaking, as well. I had mine come out one time that we couldn't get it back in, and it was 3 hours at the hospital.
Right, and you've reduced your own shoulder many times. I've reduced mine more than a number of times, and you
might be taking over the hashtag accumulation mark on that. I didn't document mine. They would just come out, we put them in, but it sounds like you're well overdue for surgery.
Yeah, I mean, I went 20 years without needing surgery, and then this year I'm up to dislocation number 9. That's to the point where I think 2 days ago I was getting in the van, I reached for the door, and I just kind of stretched a little bit, and it just came out of its socket, and I was just like, are you kidding me? So I had to get out of the car, and lately what I do is I just grab a doorknob, and I just kind of wrench my shoulder around until it goes in. But anyway, yeah, it's not fun. I'm going to be joining you in the surgery front, and we're in a sling soon. But yeah, let's talk about that day. I mean, what were you thinking? So let's go over the footage. So we're riding, we're sessioning. What do you call that zone?
We call it mini rampage as a joke.
Right.
Just, it's a cut bank that, you can ride down. There's a handful of different lines, and they start easy over here and they get a little more difficult as you move over. I'd never done the one furthest on rider's left. I had done the other 3 lines that day, and every time we rode by, I was like, I'll check off another one. And it looked good. The dirt looked good. All my previous routes were good. There weren't any complications, and this one had a cool steep drop in. You had to do a front wheel lift, and then there was going to be a small amount of air time. And I was like, in my world, it's not a complicated feature. I was just like e-bike free riding. It's there. It doesn't look difficult. It all looked good. I did not anticipate the landing being as soft and deep as it was, and it just put my weight forward and then slapped me super hard on the run out.
Yeah. So that one footage angle was gnarly.
If we relate that to risk assessment, I thought I had my test runs on the other routes were good, and I just got caught out by not like hiking up the landing and knowing how deep my tires would sink into that soft decomposed granite. And then because that kind of a maneuver for me is relatively routine, I didn't even consider if something went poorly on the landing, what does the run out look like? And it's completely changed my outlook on little free ride hucks, because those cut banks are everywhere you go riding. It's a great excuse to catch 3 to 10 feet of air. You got a great landing. And as long as you stick it, the run out to the road is great. But as we all saw that day, if you don't stick the landing, something goes wrong. Dude, that road comes up hard and fast, and lucky to have only broken my arm.
Yeah, and your elbow was crazy by the time you got to the hospital. That was, it was definitely broken.
It was very swollen. I had loose pieces floating around. I could feel them. But honestly, like, you would think you break a significant piece of bone with a bunch of bone fragments in there, you think it'd be really painful. I don't know why it didn't hurt that bad. The rest of my body was in far worse pain, ribs, back, head, shoulders, knees, all that stuff. Just, I got pile drived into the dirt road.
Yeah, that was a hard one. I think the funny thing is that both of us were more concerned about my shoulder coming out of its socket on the ride.
I was so impressed all weekend that we took you on some rad trails, slapped a bunch of turns, like raw stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I've been riding
flow
like a
stuff
just to keep my shoulder intact. And the irony is that all my dislocations happen like loading the car. Like I loaded my power on the roof of the car once and jumped down and popped out and then had to get help to put it back in. And then just like reach underneath my desk, it came out of its socket. But ironically, riding, it's been solid just because, I tense it up. Careful.
Yeah. Back to the original topic, assessing risk and the reward, that little free ride line to me was, it was just for fun, right? It's, it's because it's there, check it off the box. Like that's a cool feature, add it to my repertoire of like, when I do laps, I hit it. But you talk about dislocating your shoulder when you're not even trying something like crazy. It's just, that wreck, I didn't think it was something crazy. I thought it was pretty low risk. I had zero thoughts that it wasn't going to be 100% successful. Like I'm not doing stunts and features if there's a question of, am I going to stick this? No, it's 100%. If I'm going to do a jump or a drop or a shoot I'm not doing it thinking, oh, there's a 10% chance that I might wreck. Because if I analyze the feature and I think it could go poorly, I'm not going to do it. Like the intent is we're calculated, we're reckless, we're smart, we're skilled, at our meter, right?
I mean, we've got decades of experience in mountain biking, and we're used to riding.
Yeah. And then personally, I was coming off this, like I'm riding my downhill bike once or twice a week. All the gnarly stuff isn't gnarly anymore. It's routine, right? We're hitting the 30, 40 foot jumps every ride. So the baseline of my riding it's up here. I'm thinking about, going racing in the spring. And so to maintain that level of skill and confidence, you just have to do that level of riding all the time, or it's not easy. It's not safe. It's, the confidence is key. But if you don't do it all the time, it's hard to be confident and trust the bike and trust the line and trust your line choices and trust the features, right?
Yeah, and on that ride, we were on e-bikes, and then both our e-bike setups are basically like our mini DH bikes. And so we're basically doing, it's like self shuttle runs where we're riding big stuff. Both their bikes are set up for big hits. We got lots of
170 travel in the front. That thing, it's so planted. It wants to fly. It wants to do gnar. It wants to shred.
Time. Yeah, I think sometimes we just forget that the stuff involves a level of risk, and we ride that stuff regularly. There's that comfort level, and then sometimes you just got to remember. Do you ever think about those worst case scenarios?
Coaching the kids over the years, been teaching them trail awareness and looking at the Alex and Aliana, they're checking off boxes on features throughout the local trail system, hitting gap jumps or step downs or chutes that you're riding down. And, I try to show them what's the safe way to do this. What if something goes wrong? Look at your run. So the lessons I'm teaching my offspring, I failed to apply to my own riding because it had become so routine, and I had been doing features like that were way bigger and equal consequence. But until it goes wrong, I hadn't even considered the fact that, oh yeah, it could go wrong. And then if it does go wrong there, it's, it could be really catastrophic, like where I wrecked and broke my elbow. We had talked about in the past, if that was just a huck into a big long landing and you could go over the bars and tumble and get back up and laugh it off, no big deal. But without a safe run out that you can, account for if something goes wrong, that's the new lesson to be learned at our wise old age here that
Yeah,
I can pass on to the younger generation.
So that really is the kind of the takeaway. Really is risk assessment, and how do you pass that on to the kids? Because we have to remember that this stuff that involves a level of risk, and we have a lot of confidence because we ride the stuff all the time. And like, admittedly, I'm pretty conservative at the moment, just having a lot of injuries. But now I'm hitting the gym after the surgery. My goal is to get back to where I'm riding the stuff again because I miss that stuff. But I don't think I'll be doing no footers as much, no handers on that stuff. But there's going to be that day where you're like, oh, let's get the camera out and shoot that sweet shot. This looks amazing. And I still want to go back and do a big no hander on the crabapple hits because I've photographed the Crankworks stuff and the whip off, and it just looks epic. And I'd love to have that framed and mounted on the wall at home. So yeah. In terms of your crash, let's talk about that medical experience. Like, what was the next few days like? You crashed, flew up your shoulder.
Crash, blew up the elbow. And I knew it was broken. I knew the rest of my body, like, I didn't need emergency care. I just needed an x-ray. I needed a prescription for pain meds, and I needed a referral to somebody who could do surgery, right? And when everyone's like, oh, what hospital do you want to go to? I was like, I don't need a hospital, bro. I have a broken arm. I need x-rays. Like, take me to urgent care. Costs less. You can get the same, basic level of care. And that's what I got. I was in. It was a bit much for that provider. He was like, well, your bone might have come out of your arm. And if that's the case, I need you in the hospital for emergency surgery. But once he had called orthopedics, and they had decided that the bone had not broken the skin and it was fine. Clean it up, put me in a splint, give me some pain meds, send me to talk to the surgeon, on Monday or whatever.
Yeah. So, I mean, thinking about all this when we talk about the topic of risk assessment and risk versus reward, like, what's the takeaway we can pass on? It's like, for you, you're passing this on to the kids. And this is highly relevant at this point because in the last 2-3 years, both your son and daughter have had their first major wrecks with major injuries.
We've all broken bones now. Yeah. It started with Aliana. She's 15, overjumped at the bike park at Mount Bachelor, ended up multiple fractures in her skull requiring, 3 plates, 15 screws, and thankfully for her, that was, for the most part, the extent of her injuries. Like, no traumatic brain injury. She was clearly concussed, but no lingering symptoms. I would say she's at 95% completely back to normal. She's got some scars, minor residual eyeball. It sits a little differently. But since then, she came back and is like twice, if not 3 times, the mountain biker that she was that summer. Like, she's come back and progressed slow and safe, but she is charging. And she went on to do some more downhill racing and qualifies to race junior expert downhill.
Yeah, and she's doing all the disciplines. She's in NICA doing the XC races. She's got a pretty sweet XC hardtail.
Yeah, second overall in her class for the high school state championships, and she got mostly second places in all the races. And then she's racing enduro, wins everything she enters. Even when there isn't a youth class, first place women expert at the biggest enduro race in Southern Oregon. Very proud. And then your nephew, he's mountain biking a ton. He's coaching, certified BICP mountain bike skills instructor, certified ski instructor, and he had his first broken bone about 5 weeks before I broke my elbow. Jumping went poorly and broke his portion of his sacral spine.
He's just
he just got released for sports activities and had a successful day on his skis. So late start to his ski instructor season, but it is game on, and he's just going to have to build back up. And he hasn't even talked about his mountain bike since he got hurt. I brought it up, and I think he's just in winter mode. And when spring rolls around, and he hangs up his skis and will fix his bike, and he'll get back into mountain bike mode and coaching mode, and he'll be strong and healthy. From his wreck, we definitely, a conversation you and I've had multiple times is, you see it at all the bike parks now. It's a little cliche, but pre-ride, re-ride, free ride. And when you're out mountain biking, there's jump trails everywhere. And we went to the top, dropped in. That was our warm up for me. Right. That's, these jumps, they're max 20, 25 feet. That's, I think, pretty routine. But I think for somebody like Alex, he doesn't, only in mountain bike season does he ride 2-3 times a week. But in the off season, he doesn't ride very much, if at all. And I didn't even consider that. I was like, oh, he's an experienced mountain biker. He's going to jump what he wants to jump. And he just kind of got, off balance and then hit the ground really hard.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, part of this conversation, we talk about riding within your limits, but also leveling up so those limits expand, right?
Yeah.
So I as someone who coached a lot in the Bay Area, I'm not as active now, but I still really spend a lot of time thinking about skills practice, and I actually just really enjoy it. For us back in the day, we just rode BMX, and BMX is essentially skills practice all the time. What kind of skills, drills, and practice are you doing with Aliana and Alex?
It's bike park. The repetition, hitting the same jumps over and over. They both, since they've been mountain biking since a really young age, their technical skills, far surpass any of the, some of these kids that they just get on a bike and start jumping. The skills acquired to ride, tech, I think is different than learning how to jump. Would you agree?
Yeah, any kind of experience is good, right? It's all cumulative.
Yeah. So
different skills.
Their riding in the tech is amazing for their age and the amount of time they've been riding. The jumping, it's repetition and not advancing to go too big, too fast, like having the timing maneuver at the apex of your jump, right? Everybody has one. You develop a safety air, and I've always told them, they've heard it so many times, when you're jumping, you need to be a pilot and not a passenger. I think that is, something that you can apply to a lot of stuff in your life, not just riding or sporting activities, but just life. It's gonna say that on my tombstone because I say it so much, but I think it's so appropriate that you have to be actively in control and telling your bike or telling the world what you want out of it, and then make it happen, right? So jumping their bikes, you got to learn the timing maneuver. Alex learned it long before her sister. She was jumping bigger than him a little soon and didn't have her timing maneuver dialed. And, you got to learn when to fly with front wheel high and when you can fly with your front wheel low, right?
Yeah, and I think that's where just having a bicycle skills park nice is such a valuable thing to have for our bike community. I know I bought our place by the bike park specifically because I've always wanted to live by a bike park and have somewhere to ride. And ironically, I haven't been riding there that much since last year, but that's my plan, get all my skills back. And once this injury hurdle is done, it was great to have the kids up. I want to do that more this coming summer after I get repaired because, I'm planning to build some dirt jump bikes. We have some, we have to carry some up and then can practice all the skills, right?
Yeah.
Doing things like whips, getting comfortable hands and feet off in case they come off. The whole thing with practicing tricks is you're putting your bike in different maneuvers and positions in the air. It just really builds that comfort level. And it's such an easy transition to go from trying to boost and get height versus scrubbing and trying to stay low and having that level of control. But anyway, yeah, I think that's coming to the end of our time. Any thoughts, takeaways on the topic?
Oh, looking back on what this does to like my psyche, I'm sure it, like with any injury, the minor PTSD you get from a bad injury fades over time. But the question mark that raises in my mind is twofold. One's physical and the other is mental, right? So if we're going on a full downhill race campaign starting in the spring, what are the physical barriers that I have to overcome, right? 3 shoulder surgeries, an elbow surgery, how much more potential abuse can it take? Am I risking further injury? If I'm between the tape, how hard do I push it? I'm really not there to race for me. I'm there to help coach my daughter, who is winning races, and she's just so excited about racing and loves it. So like the balance of how hard do I want to push it just for personal gain, and then managing her safety as well. The mental side of things is my concern is if I roll up to the crux of the downhill course and I'm analyzing it with my daughter and her best friend that is, racing with her, we got to choose a line and then execute the line. There's a small part of me that has a fear of not wanting to drop in on something, right? That's like, that's the line you need to take. And I've never had that fear in my mind. I look at something, I'm like, yes, everyone rides it. I'll ride it. Here's the basic maneuver to execute it. But now that things have gone wrong when I thought they were going to go right, it's a little more thought goes into it, and I'm sure it'll be fine. I'll warm back up to things like any athlete would after an injury. But you talk about sports psychology and all of this. It's very real. Coming back from injury and the hurdles you have to overcome to like get back in there and return to the level that you want to be, whether that's the same, lower, or higher than pre-injury, right?
Yeah.
So I think time will tell.
Yeah. In fact, next time maybe we can chat about some potential strategies on reducing risk. And I mean, the topic of risk assessment, I find especially fascinating since you just kind of entered this stage where you're like, I might start thinking a little more about stuff before I drop in. Whereas before it was just like, look at it, you instantly kind of take it in. You're like, yep, got it.
Well, I can say I rarely crash on features because the features, they're programmed into the line, right? You look at a motocross track, features they've all been ridden at all kinds of speeds, right? You look at mountain bike jump trails, there's a formula for speed and control. And, if you're going slow, you got to pop. If you're going fast, you got to scrub. Trail speed, you jump it, regular. So like the features have been rarely something I crash on, and it's washing a corner or your front wheel tucking when you didn't expect to. I think those are the wrecks that, usually those are less like intense, but going up and racing Northwest Cup and talking to some of these people about these gnarly wrecks they've had, and they're like, oh yeah, a week in the ICU. Is that really something that we're after? And huge risk when you're pushing speeds on really technical terrain, right? I mean, bike park jumps all day. I don't need body armor. We're hitting landings. I think it's going fast in the tech. Like you look at World Cup, the wrecks at speed are massive.
Yeah, and it's funny because that's another topic. I think we'll save that for another episode. But like, I'm not even really wearing that much body armor, and I've definitely paid the price just living by a bike park. Was it 2 summers ago? My crank bolt wasn't tight enough, and it slipped out, and I basically slapped the ground and just put a hole in my knee that lasted 2 months.
Yeah.
I don't even wear full face half the time, which I need to start thinking about doing. And ironically, that was the first ride I've been on with you in a while where you weren't in a full face, and you potentially might have hit your head a lot more, or you might have had a better crash if you did wear a full face. It's tough to say.
Yeah, that's tough to say because I didn't hit my face. Like I took it all right there, contusions to my head. So I think the helmet did its job. But yeah, historically I ride in a full face helmet, but I think I had gotten so used to riding, like I don't hit my face, so the chin guard was just decorative, So I don't know if I'm replacing that helmet or if I'll just go back to what I was doing.
Yeah, totally. Well, if you find this topic interesting, definitely leave some comments below. Love to hear what people's thoughts are on managing a risk, especially middle-aged as a mountain biker. And hopefully I'm in for surgery soon, and we're both recovering around the same time, so we can get some bike park laps in the summer with the kids.
Yeah, more bike park.
Awesome. That's it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in.